not only for confirming the presence of the disease, but also to rule out the disease in healthy subjects. So this is very important when, as far as for diagnosis and other clinical evaluations, this is really important. So a lot of research is being done on various diagnostic tests, and basically what we want to find is, we want to find the decisions that is based on truth. So we want to try to avoid misclassification as much as possible, and we want to find out the truth, or whether how much the test is effective in making the correct diagnosis. So the usually in any diagnostic test analysis, first we find out its validity by comparing it with a gold standard. So when we talk about gold standard, there are a few things which I would like to mention. So usually this gold standard, you might have a doubt whether which one you should use as a gold standard when you take any particular uh, for your study, or for any particular kind of treatment modality. So what is there is no hard and fast rule about gold standard, choosing gold standard for a diagnostic test. The only thing is the gold standard that you choose should be error free, and it should be there should be some evidence that it is best, or it is after doing some studies, we should be able to tell that this is effective or this is better. So such method can be chosen as a gold standard. And a gold standard, for example, for acute pancreatitis, before the gold standard that was available was serum amylase, that is before the CT. That was, and then it keeps on changing. The gold standard what we use now may not be the gold standard that we use in the next or coming year. So it keeps on changing. Then we can have a test which has a continuous outcome, or it can be a categorical data also that you are comparing. Then conventionally, the standard way of describing the accuracy of a diagnostic test is by plotting a 2x2 table. This is performed when the test results are recorded as a dichotomous outcome. That is, we'll have a 2x2 table, positive, negative outcomes, or present, absent, like that. A dichotomous kind of a outcome. Now let's look at what are the background and rationale for receiver operating curve, or ROC analysis. So this ROC analysis was originated somewhere in 1915, and it started in electronic signal detection theory. Then the ROC methodology was started in psychology, that is to determine the relationship between different properties of physical stimuli and other attributes. Then later on in radiology, it started in somewhere in 1960, and even now it's very widely used in radiology, pathology, etc., microbiology, all those. Now coming to the criteria for evaluating diagnostic tests. So there are a few criteria that we have to consider when we are evaluating any diagnostic test. The first one is acceptability. The second one is repeatability. Third one is cost, and fourth one is validity. So acceptability, repeatability, I think it will be all, it's not the matter of concern, but validity is more important. Also, it is, I mean, I'm not telling it's not a matter of concern, but validity also is very important. And also the cost part, not every, before when we want to evaluate a diagnostic test, we want to, cost is one of the important factor that we should consider. Then what are the diagnostic test characteristics? So the first one is sensitivity. All of you know about what is sensitivity, is the ability to diagnose the disease correctly. So it's also called as true positives. Next is specificity, able to exclude the truly non-disease. That is the ability to exclude the truly non-disease. That's called as a specificity. Then there's positive predictive value. So if the test result is positive, then what is the probability of the for getting that disease. That is called as positive predictive value. Then there's negative predictive value. That is the probability of a person showing as a negative by test. Then what is the chance that he is truly disease free? That is negative predictive value. Then there are likelihood ratios. Likelihood ratios are actually used for for calculating the discriminating ability of the test. And it is between the measured, that is between the deceased and non-deceased individual. For example, if I say the likelihood ratio is 2.6, that means that there's 2.6 times more likely that a disease, the test result is, it's like a person is 2.6 times more likely to be deceased than non-deceased, given the test result is positive, like that. So it tells you about the discriminative ability of the test. And this is the method of how we calculate the sensitivity and specificity. So there is a positive test result, negative test result, and there's like a disease present and absent. And so for calculating the sensitivity, it's true positivity divided by true positive plus false negative. And false negative fraction is 1 minus sensitivity, or it is called as 1 minus sensitivity. That is false negative is equal to false negative divided by true positives plus false negatives. So like this, we can calculate all the particular characteristics for a diagnostic data using these, that is sensitivity, specificity, positive predictive value, and negative predictive value. So this is an example. So here they have used BMI as a cutoff for detection of breast cancer. So in this data, we have BMI here, and there is true positive, false negative, false positive, true negative. And then for each BMI value, they have given the ability of the test, that is sensitivity and the specificity. What are the uses of the diagnostic test? One of the important use of diagnostic test is to find out the discriminatory ability of the test to correctly classify the diseased and non-diseased subject. Like for example, we can say that how good a particular test is in detecting a true positive. Like for example, we can say for mammography to detect breast cancer, the gold standard is always biopsy. So that's a kind of how we calculate discriminative ability. Then finding the optimal cutoff point to classify or to disease subjects as diseased and non-diseased as non-diseased. For example, if you want to find the optimal cutoff value for obesity and the markers for metabolic syndrome, so body fat, in one of the journals, body fat was used as one of the index for finding out the cutoff. For using the body fat cutoff, they were able to classify the metabolic syndrome correctly. Then comparing the efficacy of 2 or more medical tests for assessing the same disease. Like example, if we want to say for diagnosing COVID, we can have RT-PCR and we have the rapid antigen test. So we can give that, we can compare 2 or more medical tests and to see which is more showing more good results. Then even some cases it's used for measuring the inter-rater variability. So if we have 2 or more observers measuring the same measuring a same variable, if you have 2 or more observers, then we can see whether they are how much they are interrelated. So such analysis can be done. So this receiver operating or ROC curve is a kind of a graph that plots a full picture of trade-off between sensitivity and 1 minus specificity across series of cutoff point. So, and the area under the curve is considered as an effective measure of inherent validity of a diagnostic test. So let's see the how does it look like. So this is the suppose we have the number of patients who are normal, and this is disease. So we want to find an optimal cutoff that can discriminate between those who are normal and abnormal. So we want, so this is how it is. There will be false negative and there will be false positive. So we want to find an optimum cutoff or a trade-off between these two things. So as I told you, gold standard is the test that is assumed to have the highest attainable diagnostic accuracy. And we cannot actually validate this except by comparison with another. And as I told you, it can change over time. It is not constant. The gold standard keeps on changing. And the test that we are actually testing against gold standard, that is called as index test. So this is a classical method of evaluating the diagnostic accuracy of a medical test. The first, we have all the participants, then we have the new test or the index test. So all participants undergo the new test, and then there is a gold standard. All the participants will undergo the gold standard also. And then it is considered like the index test results and the gold standard is being compared, and the sensitivity and specificity is being calculated. So this is the flow of how the analysis happens. Then how do we interpret the ROC curve? So the total, let's see, like I'll tell you how does an ROC curve look like. So this is the ROC curve. So the ROC curve has sensitivity in the y-axis and 1 minus specificity in the x-axis. And there's a middle line. This is it's like a kind of a center line that actually helps in discriminating the or showing how good the test is. So if you get a if your test is showing the area that or else your test after doing your new diagnostic test against the gold standard, you're getting the area under the curve maximum covered, then that means the as much as area it covers, it better your test is. So the closer it is to this left hand corner, then the better the test is. So at least this is a 50% limit. So if your test is falling below this level 50%, then that means it is not acceptable or it's not a good diagnostic test. So the better it will be more effective as it approaches the left hand corner. As the curve approaches the left hand corner, the better the test would be. So the total area under the curve is actually the indicator for telling the ability of the test, how good or what is the overall performance of the test. Larger the area under the curve, better the overall performance. So as I told you, a good test will result in an ROC curve that rises to the upper left hand corner very quickly. And therefore, the area under the curve is a measure of quality of diagnostic test. So if you get a good area under the curve, that means you have your diagnostic test is good or efficient. So if the area under the curve is 1 or it is close to 100%, area is 1 means it is better. Area is 5 means it is not better. I mean, it's like it's not good. So if it is between, if it is above 0.5 to 0.75 or between 50 and 75, we can say your test is fair. And if it is between 75 and 92, it is good. 92 and 97 is very good. And 97 to 1.00, it is excellent. So it actually varies the situation of, this is actually an arbitrary levels. This is not quite fixed, or, it depends on what kind of a test you have again, but this is a normal reference we can use actually. Now, how is this area under the curve calculated? So this area under the curve, there's a theorem or there's a kind of a mathematical method in which this area under the curve is calculated. So basically there are 3 methods. One is called as parametric, other is non-parametric. So in non-parametric method, usually it is calculated by using a trapezoidal rule that joins all the points, and then it is summed up using some particular index. So, and then the area is calculated. And then there's parametric approach in which based on the distribution, the area under the curve is calculated. But I'm not going to that theoretical matter, but what is important for us is interpretation of the results and the other things. So this just for your understanding, I just tell you quickly about I just told you about what exactly how these the area is calculated. There are different methods for this. Now, how do we calculate the optimum cutoff value? So this is an important question. So most of you would be knowing how to calculate sensitivity, specificity, PPV, and PV, etc. But when it comes to ROC curve, how to calculate, how to find out that optimum cutoff value is one question that is commonly asked. So that's the reason I have included this. So usually there are three methods which is commonly used. One is square of distance method, Uden index method, and combining ROC and cost analysis. So this square of distance, this is just a method to find out the cutoff value. Like for example, if you want to say which BMI cutoff is important in predicting, say, breast cancer. So to find out that optimum value, we have these three methods. So the first one is square of distance method. In the square of distance method, we calculate the optimum cutoff value by this equation, that is d square is equal to 1 minus TPF square plus F, that is true positive fraction square, plus false that is in simple words 1 minus sensitivity square plus 1 minus specificity square. So the after calculating this, we get one we will get the d square value. So the point where the d square value is minimum is considered to be the best cutoff. So this is one method, but the commonly adopted method is Uden's index method. So Uden's index method, if you want to calculate the cutoff value, it is using sensitivity plus specificity minus 1. This is the equation. So you calculate the cutoff for each BMI, you calculate the sensitive cutoff for each value for BMI, you calculate the sensitivity, specificity, and then you use this equation, you get the Uden's index. So you have to calculate the maximum of which has the maximum Uden's index value. So that is taken as the best cutoff. I'll demonstrate this in an example when we run the analysis. Then there's one more method in which the ROC and cost is combined. This is more an utility-based decision, because sometimes the test may be very effective, but it is very costly. And in that situation, we have to combine both two things here. That is, we have to, when we establish a cutoff, we have to think of many things in terms of cost also. So, for example, a disease with low prevalence and high cost of false positive diagnosis, the cutoff may be chosen at a higher value to maximize the specificity. So this depends on your situation or what kind of diagnosis you want to make. So in such situation, you have to think about cost also as a factor. Otherwise, you can, in a routine thing, you're just comparing whatever is already there. You may not think of all these costs and other things. You can directly use Uden index and calculate the cutoff. Now, now I'll just tell you about once you calculate the area under the curve, we have to see whether that is statistically significant also. So that means we have to see whether there is a chance factor or something like that. So for that reason, we get the p-value also. And when we go to the example, I'll explain further, because this is just a theoretical part of it, and you may find it difficult to follow. So I'll just go to the example and then I'll come back to these further slides. I'll just go to the data and show you the analysis and then come back to this part. So So this is the data I have got. So I have got data over here. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so there's some 80 subjects I have here, and I have like, for example, my outcome is this is 1 and 2. This means whether one means okay, so let's take 1 as those who had PCOS, and 2 is those who do not have PCOS. And we want to predict if BMI can be, what cutoff of BMI will be helpful in predicting whether a person in correctly classifying those with PCOS and without PCOS. So BMI is our index test, and we want to know whether what is the cutoff we can find. We want to find out a cutoff for BMI and correctly telling whether a person may get PCOS or may not get PCOS. So this is the analysis. You have to go to ROC. So in ROC, you have to take BMI as the test variable and group as the state variable, because we have already got those who no, we have 1 as PCOS and 2 as not PCOS. Sorry, I think it is 2 is PCOS. Okay, so 2 is with PCOS. Then with diagonal, so you have to check these option: ROC curve with diagonal reference line, standard error and confidence interval, coordinates of points of ROC. If required, we can give that. Okay, this is not so good, but we'll try the other way around. I think it has to be, I'm not sure about the coding. Let's say, suppose it was 1, let's see. Suppose 1 is the group with PCOS. Okay, that is the outcome. Okay, so here at least we can see the results. I'll just share the results now. I think you can see the screen. So the results will be like this. First, you can see a case processing summary where you will get the number of positives, number of negatives, like how many are positives in the data. Out of 80, 50 are positives. That means 50 are with the PCOS and 40 are without PCOS. Now coming to the graph. So this is the graph that I was speaking about, the ROC curve. So here we have sensitivity in the y-axis and 1 minus specificity in the x-axis. Now we have to check this diagonal reference line. As I told you, 50% of the area will be below this and 50 will be above this. So this blue line indicates the R test, what we have used. For example, I have used BMI here. Because I want to see what cutoff of BMI can be adopted to predict whether a person may go for a PCOS or may get PCOS or not. So this is the after plotting the graph, we can see that it is almost covering 60. So we can see that the graph covers almost 60% of the area under the curve. So as I told you, if it covers above 50, okay, it is acceptable. At least we can say 60% of the area under the curve it is covering. So it is fair. We can say it is fair. It is not highly effective, or we can't just use BMI as a single variable to predict the or to correctly classify PCOS. We need to add addition variables, but here for the time being, for an example, I'm just showing you. So so here BMI is showing only 60% or area under the curve that is covered. So if you want to see the exact area under the curve, you can check this next part of the analysis. So here area under the curve is 0.60, that is 63.3%. The standard error is 0.60. And this asymptotic, this significant, that is, this is the p-value. So this p-value is actually what I was trying to tell you. So this p-value is this p-value is for testing the hypothesis whether the area under the curve. So 1 minute. Yes. Yes, so here I would like to show here. Okay, this 0.50 to 0.75 is fair. So we got 0.60, so we can say it is fair. Now coming to the this part, I'll come to it later. So now I'm talking about this part where we have got a p-value over there. So that is like here it is giving in the results. Yeah, here it is 0.031, that is the p-value that it gives. So actually what it tests is that whether the area under the curve is equal to 50% or not equal to 50%. That's what it tests. So we can say that here the area under the curve is not equal to, that means that this is statistically significant. So that means the area under the curve is this is not because of chance factor, we can say. The area under the curve is not equal to 50%, and it is not because of chance factor. That's all. Now coming to the coordinates of the ROC curve. So here you can see the coordinate, the test variable in the heading. That is the test variable that we have used here is BMI. So that comes in the heading itself. So which variable you have used. Then it gives you for each cutoff of BMI, what is the sensitivity and what is the 1 minus specificity. So this is actually used to plot this ROC curve. So now how do we find a cutoff from this? So here you can see in SPSS, it doesn't give you a direct cutoff. So it doesn't give you that the cutoff is, say the BMI is this much is the cutoff, that like that it won't give you. It will give you just the sensitivity and specificity of all the coordinates or all the BMI values it will give you. So from this we need to identify the optimum cutoff value. So for that there's one shortcut which I can tell you, or how we usually adopt that way I can tell you. Otherwise, there is another software which is called as, okay, I don't remember right now. I'll come back and tell you. I'll just get back to you on this. There's one more software which gives you the cutoff directly actually. So I'll copy this. I'll just show you how we can find out the cutoff values from this data. So we just go to a new. I'm just opening one Excel sheet now. I'm just opening one new Excel document. Okay. So this is a new Excel file that I've opened. So here I have whatever I have got from SPSS, I have just put it over here. So there's the BMI values are there, sensitivity and 1 minus specificity is here. So what I want to calculate is the cutoff value. For that, I have told you we can use Uden's index. So for Uden's index, there is an equation, right? So Uden's index is sensitivity plus specificity minus 1. That is the equation to calculate the optimum cutoff value using the Uden's index. So I will just calculate the, this is the sensitivity. Sensitivity is already there. here we have sensitivity values for each cutoff, but specificity, it is 1 minus specificity here. So I'm just going to calculate specificity from this. So specificity will be 1 minus this value. So I've got sensitivity, I have got the specificity. So this is sensitivity for each BMI cutoff. This is the sensitivity and this is the specificity. Now, according to Uden's index, we have to calculate sensitivity plus specificity minus 1, right? So sensitivity plus specificity. So I'm just going to add this first, sensitivity plus specificity. Now this we have to subtract from 1, that is sensitivity plus specificity minus 1. So I've got the Uden's index value. So this is the Uden's index value. Now, how do we find out the cutoff? So here we have to choose the maximum value for Uden's index as a cutoff. So we need to find out which is the maximum value out of this. So we can just search. Instead of that, I'm just going to give this function so that will be easy. So the maximum value is 0.260. So 0.260 in the data, you have to find where 0.260 is. So here you can see 0.260. So this is the cutoff, that is the BMI cutoff is 26.97, is showing we can be taken as considered as the cutoff for this particular situation. So this is 26.97 and it has a sensitivity of 0.66% and specificity. This is 1 minus specificity again here. So this is how we find a cutoff. So this is, so I'll just repeat. So first we have to calculate the specificity, then sensitivity plus specificity, sensitivity plus specificity minus 1. Then you find the maximum value of that and you identify which is the cutoff. So corresponding to that value will be the cutoff that you have to add up for your data. So this is one example. So as I told you, in SPSS, you won't get the sensitivity or you won't get the exact cutoff value. You have to calculate by yourself. That is the thing. Now coming to the next part of analysis. Suppose if we have so this was about a continuous data we had. So the BMI is a continuous data. So we have used a continuous test there and we have identified the cutoff value. Now suppose if it is a qualitative kind or categorical data, like we have 2 tests that was done on the same group. For example, say RT-PCR and antigen test was done on the same group and we want to find this diagnostic accuracy. For that, statistically, what we can, for testing the hypothesis, we can use McNemar's test for look whether both the test, whether there is a concordance or discordance, we can use this particular test, that is a McNemar's test. So this McNemar's test is like a paired data. Only for paired data we can use this test. And the null hypothesis is that the sensitivity of the 2 tests are equal, or we can say that P of A plus B, that is this P of A plus B is equal to P of A plus C. That is the hypothesis that we are testing. This is another example where McNemar's test was used. Was one of the study. So here they have compared the histopathological examination results. That is with ADA. The ADA results are compared with histopathology here, and for diagnosis of tuberculosis. For in this case, what they did was they have got the sensitivity of the ADA and also the sensitivity of the histopathological test. So ADA had 94% sensitivity, and histopathology was showing a sensitivity of 77%. Now we want to see whether this difference is statistically significant or not. So that we can use a McNemar's test, and it was applied. So it showed that there is a significant discordance between the two proportion. That means I will just show you what is discordance. So if you see in this data A, B, C, D, this is the discordant pair. So if this is actually, these are the A and D will be those who are misclassified. So this is, so when we are calculating McNemar's, we are considering this discordant pair. This is what we are actually looking at. So I will go to an example because we don't have much time here. So I'll just show you using example what is discordant and what is concordant, and how to interpret that. So I'll go to the data now. So this is the data that we have. This is for predicting, not predicting. These are the two tests for clinical assessment of, say, some kind of brain injury, and this is for this is the test, that is TBI scan is another test, diagnostic test. So we want to compare the clinical and TBI scan results for head injury. So in this same way, we have to go to, so before going to analyze, I'll just show you the cross table. So we, for calculating the McNemar's, so go to the descriptive analysis cross table. There are two ways of doing. One is you can just go to descriptive statistics, cross tabs. They take clinical in rows and the TBI scan in column. And then in statistics, you can go and click McNemar's, continue. Then you can just give percentage, okay, then click okay. Or I'll just remove percentage for now. I'll just show you how it looks. Then I'll come back to it. Okay. So we have the results here. So this is the comparison, clinical, and this is from the TBI scan, and this is from the clinical. So this is this. If you see here, nothing. Both the test has correctly classified. If you take clinical and TBI scan, 100% it was able to correctly classify, right? So the true positives were correctly classified here. Now, when it comes to true negatives, if you see here, it is 59. That is 20 here. Here, actually, if both the tests are equally identifying, it will be 0 here. So if you can see it is 20 over here. So that means only 59. It with true negatives is 59, whereas false positives are more here. Here false negatives are 0, but false positives are like 20 here, right? So that is why now we want to test this. That is, if you look at this way, that TBI scan, whether there is a the discordance. We want to see we want to test whether there is a statistically significant discordance in proportion. Okay, so there is a significant discordance in proportion or not. That is what we are testing. So if you see it is 0, 0, 0, so that means there is a significant difference in the proportion of discordance between the two methods that we have used here. That means it's not equal. Basically, we can say it is not equal. So that is how we interpret this. Now coming to ROC again. So this is the same data. So I hope you understood the McNemar's test, how to go about it. One more method to do it is by analyzing non-parametric legacy dialogues, and in that you can take two related samples. So in two related samples, you can give your variable 1, variable 2, and here you can click McNemar's test. The same results you will get. Okay, this is another way. And one more, yeah, if you want to do the ROC for the same data, click on ROC and then take TBI. Because TBI is considered to be gold standard, we are taking TBI here. And again, I'm not sure which is the outcome. Let me try as 2. Clinical is the test variable. Okay. So I'll share the results now. So in the same way, you will get the results. You will get the area under the curve here also. So here it is 87.3% area under the curve. So we can say clinical results are also good. But there's no better, the concordance, if you see, there's no much concordance in proportions of correctly classifying the false positivity. When it comes to true positives, it is good, but when it comes to true negatives, it is not able, there is a kind of misclassification. That is why it is, it has shown there in the McNemar's test. But here when we say area under the curve, it is good. Okay. So now when we have to calculate the sensitivity and specificity for this kind of data, we have to use here also in SPSS, there is a disadvantage that it won't give you the calculation for sensitivity and specificity directly. So we need to again, as I told you, you can use Excel or any other tools to do the calculation of sensitivity directly. So you just have to calculate the sensitivity, that is 58 by 58 will be the sensitivity, 100%. So sensitivity will be A by A plus B, that is the equation. So 58 is A, 58 by 58, that's 100% will be the sensitivity. And specificity will be 59 divided by 79 multiplied by 100. So 74% is the specificity. So like this, you can calculate after you get the 2 by 2 table or the comparisons. After you get it in SPSS, you can take it in Excel and do. That is another way. So there are certain biases that can come when we are enrolling, when we are planning such studies. We have to be very careful. We have to consider all eligible participants and enroll either consecutively or randomly. And we have to ensure that all patients represents a broad sample of those who are tested and intended for use with clinical practice. Then when we are choosing the index test, the index test should be interpreted without the knowledge, should be interpreted without the knowledge of the reference test, with one or more or less information than in practice. Then there are some checklists that if you want to evaluate the how good your research is in diagnostic accuracy, you can use these online checklists which is available. One is it will help in planning of your study and also for evaluating how good your the analysis or your methodology is in terms of evaluating the accuracy of the test. So these are the 3 important checklists that One is the Standards for Reporting of Diagnostic Accuracy Studies, STARD. The second is Quality Assessment of Diagnostic Accuracy Studies, QUADAS. Then next is CASP, that is Critical Appraisal Skills Program Checklist. So these are the checklists that can be commonly used for making the, it will help you for your research. Then now coming to a little different aspect of this, like usually what we commonly use, one is agreement, another is reliability. So agreement basically tells you, these both are actually measures of reproducibility of a test. So agreement will tell you how close the scores on repeated measures are expressed in unit of measurement scale at the issue. That means when you take repeated measurements, how close you get it, how close they are, that agreement. Whereas reliability refers to the repeatability of the findings or consistency. So reliability is a measure of consistency of performance of the test when used under similar circumstances. So that is the situation when we use reliability, it is under similar circumstances. So when we say there is poor reliability, it could be due to biological variations or errors in measurement techniques. Mostly we usually come across this intra-observer or intra-measurement reliability and inter-observer reliability. So intra-observer means same observer perform the same measurements on same subjects, whereas inter-observer reliability, same subjects are measured by two independent observers. So, and there's a difference between agreement and correlation, as I think by now you would have understood what is the difference between agreement and correlation. They are not same, it is different, because agreement we use the same construct, and for correlation it is two different variables, two independent constructs that we are actually correlating. Then the statistical methods also varies. For example, when we want to find the correlation, we use Pearson's correlation, whereas if it is agreement, there are different methods to test the agreement. One is intra-class correlation coefficient, then there's kappa statistic, then there's NCNEMA's test as I showed you, then there's coefficient of variation and Blad-Altman limits of agreement that is commonly used. So intra-class correlation is not actually Pearson's correlation coefficient. There's a difference in how the values are calculated. It's actually a modification of Pearson's correlation coefficient, and but the interpretation is similar to Pearson's correlation coefficient. So if it is more than 90, we can say there's the data is more reliable. Then we can use Blad-Altman plot also to find the agreement. So when we have continuous values, we can use this Blad-Altman method to find the agreement. So it is defined as mean plus or minus one time standard deviation of the differences. For example, I have two tests here. It is test 1 and test 2. So we find the average of test 1 and find the average of test 2. Take the difference in the mean of those values. So that is plotted in the x-axis, and then test 1 minus test 2 is taken in the y-axis. And then we find whether if there is any values beyond this limit. So if it goes beyond this limit, we can say that there's one, if most of the values are falling within the two standard deviation, that means there's good agreement between the two tests. Whereas if the test results, many values are falling beyond this, we can say there's no good agreement. So this is used for continuous kind of a data. Now, whereas we have kappa statistics, where we want to find the agreement between two kind of, for two raters. If you have two raters, we use this Cohen's kappa. That is, Cohen's kappa is a to find out whether the agreement is because of chance factor or it is because there is exactly a there's a chance factor or not. So there's an equation to calculate kappa. So because we don't have much time, I'm not going into much detail. But the interpretation of kappa is like, if the kappa values are less than 20, that means there's poor agreement. If it is close to 1, it is a good agreement. Then I think I'll stop for today. I hope you understood what we have discussed. Mostly my focus was on ROC and how to interpret the ROC curve for today's session. And if you have any questions, you can ask now.